Help me. Please. Someone is following me. Lillian sent that text at 9:14 on a Thursday night, standing in the doorway of a closed laundromat on Buford Highway, Atlanta, her back pressed against the glass, rain soaking through her jacket. 12 years old. Library book tucked under one arm. Phone screen throwing blue light across her face while she watched the sidewalk and tried to remember how to breathe. She didn't know she'd hit the wrong number. She didn't know the man reading her message wasn't her grandmother. Across town, a Korean man in a dark suit looked down at his phone. He read the message once. He set his glass on the table, stood, and typed 3 words. I'm on my way. No question marks. No who is this. Just 3 words, flat and certain, from a man who ran the kind of operation that didn't put its name on anything. His name, the name people used carefully, the name that ended conversations, was King. But to understand how a 12-year-old girl ended up with his number in her phone, we have to go back 3 weeks. To a Tuesday afternoon on a Koreatown sidewalk, and a phone nobody was supposed to find. If this story has you hooked, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the ending. The Tuesday had been ordinary in every way that mattered to Lillian. School ended at 3. She stopped at the library on Claremont until 5:30, the way she always did, because the apartment was small and her grandmother's television was loud and it was easier to focus on homework with strangers around her than with the 6 o'clock news bleeding through the wall. She checked out a book she'd been waiting 2 weeks for, a story about a girl who discovers her whole town is built on a lie, and started home the long way through the Koreatown strip, because the long way had better streetlights. That was how she found the phone. It was lying face down on the sidewalk outside a dry cleaner, half hidden under the lip of a sandwich board sign. A newer model in a plain black case, no cracks. She almost walked past it. Then she thought about whoever had dropped it and how they'd probably be turning their pockets inside out right now, and she picked it up. The dry cleaner was still open. The man behind the counter had a broad face and careful eyes, and he looked at the phone in her hand the way people look at things that are more important than they're letting on. Found it outside, Lillian said. On the sidewalk. He took it from her slowly. You didn't look at it? No, she hadn't. It wasn't hers. He studied her for a moment. Then he nodded once. Okay. Thank you. She left. She had homework and dinner to think about and a new book in her bag, and she didn't think about the phone again. But before she walked out, something made her pull a receipt from her pocket, flip it over, and write on the back. She tucked it into the handle of the dry cleaning bag sitting on the counter. Found on the sidewalk. Hope you didn't lose anything important. Oh, that was all. She didn't think it was a big deal. She was the kind of person who wrote notes like that. She'd learned it from Miss Claudette, who left thank you cards for the mail carrier at Christmas and remembered the names of every cashier at the Kroger on Shaloford Road. You treated people like they mattered. That was just how you did things. She walked home. She made rice and the frozen vegetables her grandmother liked. She did her math homework at the kitchen table while Miss Claudette watched the news in the next room. She didn't think about the phone or the dry cleaner or the note with her initial on it. But someone else was thinking about the phone. King had been looking for it for 4 hours. It wasn't the phone itself that mattered, it was what was on it, a contact list that certain people couldn't afford to have sitting on a sidewalk in Koreatown. When his associate, a quiet man named Shim, walked into the restaurant that evening and set it on the table, King felt something he rarely allowed himself, relief. Then Shim slid the receipt across the table. King read it. Read it again. Hope you didn't lose anything important. Who left this? Whoever found it. Shim shrugged. The number's on the back. Lillian hadn't written her number. But the receipt had come from the laundromat 2 blocks over, and the timestamp showed it was from a machine that afternoon, and there was only one prepaid Metro account registered to that laundromat at that time. It took Shim 20 minutes to find the name. Miss Claudette Barnes. An address off Buford Highway. She lives there. Her granddaughter probably does. Girl named Lillian. King looked at the note one more time. Then he folded it and put it in his jacket pocket, which was not something he normally did, and picked up his drink and didn't say anything else. Shim saved the granddaughter's number in King's phone under a single letter. Oh, King didn't delete it. He didn't know why. He just didn't. 3 weeks later, his phone lit up at 9:14 p.m. with a message from that same number. Help me. Please. Someone is following me. King read it standing in the back room of a restaurant on Buford Highway, surrounded by men who managed the kind of business that didn't get written down. He had been in the middle of a conversation that mattered. He set his glass down, typed 3 words, and walked out without explaining himself to anyone in that room. That was also not something he normally did. Lillian was still in the doorway of the laundromat when the black Mercedes turned onto her block. She pressed herself flatter against the glass before she realized the car was slowing down for her, not for anyone else. The window came down. The man behind the wheel was the same man from the dry cleaner. She recognized something in his stillness, the way he didn't move more than he needed to. "Get in," he said. She didn't. Not immediately. Because she was 12 and her grandmother had spent 12 years teaching her not to get into cars with men she didn't know. "You texted me," he said. "I was trying to text my grandmother. I hit the wrong number." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "You didn't have to come. I was already on my way when you said that." She looked at the street behind her. The two boys who had been following her, Marcus Tate's friends, older, the kind of boys who thought a girl walking alone at night was a game, were at the end of the block. Still there. Still watching. King looked at them once. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. Something passed between the three of them across the wet street, something that had nothing to do with words, and after about 4 seconds the boys turned and walked in the other direction and didn't look back. Lillian got in the car. She sat with the library book on her lap and watched the rain streak the window while King drove. He didn't ask her questions. He didn't try to fill the silence. He just drove, and the classical music coming through the speakers was low enough that she could almost pretend it wasn't there. "Why did you come?" she asked somewhere around the third stoplight. He was quiet for long enough that she thought he wasn't going to answer. "You asked," he said. That was all. When they reached her building, Miss Claudette was at the door before Lillian could get her key out. She'd seen the headlights from the window. She stood in the doorway in her housecoat and looked at the man standing one step below her landing, this Korean man in a dark suit with rain on his shoulders, and she looked at him for a long time. "She found my phone a few weeks ago," King said. "She turned it in. I had her number in case I needed to thank her." Miss Claudette looked at him the way she looked at the mail when she suspected it had bad news inside. Careful. Not fooled. But not sending it back either. "Thank you for bringing her home," she said finally. He nodded. He walked back to his car. He drove away. Miss Claudette closed the door, put both hands on Lillian's face, and looked at her the way she only did when she'd been scared. "I'm okay," Lillian said. "I know you are," Miss Claudette said. "Because you're standing here." 4 days later, Lillian was going through her jacket pockets looking for her Charlie card and found a dry cleaning ticket instead. She stood in the kitchen with it in her hand and stared at it. It must have fallen in during that night. She'd pressed so hard against the dry cleaning bags in the back seat trying to take up as little space as possible. She should throw it away. It wasn't her ticket. She put it on the counter and went to school. She came home and it was still there. She ate dinner. She did homework. At 9 o'clock she picked up her phone, pulled up the number still listed in her recent contacts as wrong number and typed. "I think I accidentally took your dry cleaning ticket the other night. It was in my jacket pocket. Sorry." She hit send before she could think about whether she should. The response came back in 2 minutes. "Keep it. Nothing was there worth picking up." She almost smiled. Almost. Still. "Sorry. Don't be." Pause. Then the book. What was it called? She looked at the library book sitting on her desk. The one she'd been carrying in the rain. "It's about a girl who finds out her whole town has been lying to her since she was born." Another pause, longer this time. "Any good?" Lillian thought about it. She was 2/3 through. The girl in the book had just found the letter that changed everything, and Lillian had stayed up past midnight to get there. "Yeah," she typed. "It was really good." "Okay," he wrote back. That was the end of the conversation. 20 minutes, almost nothing, mostly about a dry cleaning ticket and a library book. She put her phone down and looked at the ceiling and told herself it wasn't strange. Someone had done her a kindness and she'd returned a small one. That was all it was. But she lay there for a while before she went to sleep and she thought about the way he'd asked, "Any good?" like he actually wanted to know. Like her answer mattered to someone who hadn't been required to ask. She couldn't remember the last time that had happened. Marcus Tate had been making Lillian's life difficult since October, when she beat him for the 7th grade academic award by 2 points. He hadn't done it loudly. He wasn't that kind of person. He did it the way people do things when they've grown up, understanding that they don't have to be obvious to win, through whispers, through cold shoulders, through the friends who surrounded him like weather. On a Monday in November, someone knocked her lunch tray out of her hands in the hallway. The tray hit the floor and the food went everywhere, and Marcus was already 15 feet away talking to someone else, not looking at her. His friends were laughing. A girl named Destiny, Lillian's only real friend at school, helped her pick up the pieces. "Tell a teacher," Destiny said. "Which one?" Lillian said. Because they both knew. Mr. Ellis had seen it happen and was now very interested in something on his phone. Mr. Ellis knew whose father had donated the money for the new science lab. Lillian picked up her tray. She got new food. She sat down and ate it. That night she was at the kitchen table with her homework when she picked up her phone and opened the conversation with King. She didn't plan to. Her thumbs just moved. There's a boy at my school who's been making things hard for me since I beat him in a competition. Today someone knocked my lunch on the floor in front of everyone. The teachers don't do anything because his father gives money to the school. She looked at what she'd typed. She almost deleted it. She wasn't asking for anything. She didn't want him to fix it. She had needed to tell someone who wasn't destiny, someone who wasn't going to worry, someone who could just hold the information without it costing them anything. She sent it. 3 minutes passed. Then 5. She went back to her homework. After 10 minutes her phone buzzed. What's his name? She stared at that for a second. I'm not telling you that. Okay. Then you handled it? I always handle it. I know, he wrote. That's not what I asked. She didn't answer that for a while. Then she typed, yeah. I handled it. Good, he said. And nothing else. She put the phone down. She didn't know exactly why she felt better. He hadn't solved anything. He hadn't promised to fix it. He just asked. And then said good like he meant it, like he'd been paying attention, like her handling things was something worth acknowledging. She turned back to her homework. Outside, the Atlanta night was quiet and cold, and somewhere across the city a man she barely knew had read her message 3 times before he figured out what to say, and she would never know that, and it wouldn't have changed anything if she had. She came home from school on a Wednesday to find Miss Claudette sitting at the kitchen table with a letter in front of her and a look on her face that she was trying to hide. Miss Claudette was the best person Lillian knew at hiding things from her. She'd hidden the notice from the electric company in March. She'd hidden how tired she'd been all of September, right up until the doctor appointment she thought Lillian didn't know about. She hid things the way you hide them when you love someone and you don't want the weight of your worry to land on them before it has to. But she'd been sitting at that table long enough that she hadn't thought to move when she heard the door. What's that? Lillian asked. Nothing you need to worry about tonight. Grandma. Miss Claudette folded the letter slowly. Her hands, Lillian noticed, were not quite steady. My heart, she said finally. The doctor says the condition has moved further along than it was last year. There's a procedure they want to do. Lillian set her backpack down on the chair. Okay. When? The when isn't the problem, baby. The how much, she meant. The how much without the insurance that barely covered regular appointments, let alone anything with the word procedure in it. Lillian didn't ask her to say the number out loud. She could see in her grandmother's face that saying it out loud would make it more real than Miss Claudette was ready for right now. So she sat down across from her at the table and said, okay, again, and they had dinner and she helped with the dishes, and at 9 o'clock she said goodnight and went to her room. She sat on her bed and did the math. 6 ways. 7. The babysitting money she'd been saving since summer. The small amount in Miss Claudette's account that Lillian wasn't supposed to know about. All of it together, stacked against the number she'd glimpsed at the bottom of the letter before her grandmother folded it away. She picked up her phone. She looked at King's name in her contacts. She put the phone back down. She was not going to ask. She had never asked anyone for anything that wasn't already owed to her. Every time someone left, her mother, her father, gone in different ways for the same reason, which was that they'd had their own disasters and she hadn't been enough to matter more, it had been because she'd needed something they couldn't give. She had decided, somewhere around the age of 8, that the safest thing was to need nothing. To be so self-sufficient, so quietly capable, that she never gave anyone a reason to go. She turned off the light. She lay in the dark and listened to her grandmother's television through the wall, the familiar murmur of the evening news, and she breathed, and she did not text anyone, and she told herself that she would figure it out. She always figured it out. She was in 5th period English when the assistant principal appeared at the classroom door and asked for Lillian Barnes. The hallway was empty. Mrs. Okafor, the assistant principal, had the specific expression of an adult who has information they wish they didn't have to share. There was a man at the school this morning, she said, asking questions. About you specifically. About who you spend time with outside school. She paused. He spoke to 2 teachers before someone brought it to me. I called your grandmother. Lillian felt something go cold and quiet in her chest. What did he look like? Mrs. Okafor described him. Korean, older than King, with a stillness that had made the teachers uncomfortable without them knowing why. Your grandmother wants you to call her, Mrs. Okafor said. And I want you to know that this person was asked to leave the premises and did so without incident. But Lillian, is there anything I should know? Lillian looked at her steadily. No, she said. Thank you for telling me. She called Miss Claudette from the bathroom. Miss Claudette had already called the number in her phone, the one Lillian had never explained, the one that showed up the night of the rain. King had answered on the first ring. When Lillian got home that afternoon, King's car was parked outside her building. He didn't come upstairs. He waited. When she walked out 20 minutes later, because she had changed her clothes and started the rice and made sure Miss Claudette had what she needed in that order, he was leaning against the car with his hands in his pockets, looking at nothing. She stood in front of him. Who was he? She said. His name is Cho. King said it the way you say the name of something that has caused a problem for a long time. He runs a competing organization. He's been watching me for months and looking for something to use. And he found me. He found you. He met her eyes. He saw me driving you home that night. He's been asking questions since. Lillian absorbed this. The cold, quiet feeling was still there, but underneath it something else was building. Something that was not quite anger but was related to it. So your world came to my school, she said. Yes. Because of you. Yes. She looked at him for a long moment. He didn't make excuses. He didn't explain or minimize. He just stood there and let the truth be the truth. You need to know what I am, he said. Not a version of it. All of it. So you can decide what you want to do. Tell me then, she said. They sat in his car in the parking lot of a Publix 2 streets over, because Lillian wasn't getting back into that building until she understood what she was walking into, and she needed it to be somewhere neutral, somewhere with other people nearby and lights on. He talked for almost an hour. He told her about the organization, what it moved, how it worked, who benefited and who paid the price. He told it without softening it or making it ugly for effect, just the plain shape of it, the way something looks when you've stopped trying to make it sound like anything other than what it is. He told her how his father had built it, how he had grown up inside it, learning its language before he learned to read, understanding its rules before he understood the rules of school or friendship or anything else. He told her, briefly and without drama, about the city in Korea where he was born, about the particular kind of neighborhood it was, about the specific things a boy learns about survival when survival is not guaranteed. He didn't tell it like it was meant to explain him or excuse him. He just told it the way you tell something when you're done pretending it didn't happen. I can't walk away from it, he said. It's not a job. It's what I am. But you can walk away from me, Lillian said. He was quiet. If you walked away from me, Cho wouldn't have a reason to come to my school, she said. Problem solved. That's one solution, he said. What's the other one? He looked at her. I handle Cho. The threat goes away. You go back to your library and your grandmother and your life, and none of this touches you again. And what do I owe you for that? Nothing. She looked at him for a long time. 12 years old, in the passenger seat of a car that cost more than her grandmother's apartment, talking to a man who ran operations she didn't fully understand and couldn't fully explain, and the thing she kept coming back to wasn't whether he was dangerous. She already knew he was dangerous. She'd known it the night he'd looked at those boys across the rainy street and they'd walked away without a word. The thing she kept coming back to was that he hadn't lied to her. Not once. Not even when the truth made him look like someone she should be afraid of. That night, she texted Destiny, "Do you think a person can be good at something bad and still be a good person?" Destiny responded with 3 question marks. Lillian put the phone down. She looked at the ceiling. She thought about every adult who had left her, one way or another, and how none of them had ever sat in a parking lot and told her a hard truth straight because they thought she deserved to hear it. She made her decision. She didn't see how King handled Cho. She wasn't supposed to. What she knew was that the man stopped showing up. Not just at her school, he stopped being visible anywhere connected to her world. King had moved against him the way someone moves when they know exactly where every piece is on the board. Not loudly. Not with anything that would leave a mark on the surface. Just precisely and completely, until Cho understood that the cost of continuing was higher than the value of the leverage. It took 11 days. Lillian counted, though she didn't tell anyone that she had. What it cost King she found out by accident. She was in the dry cleaner on Buford Highway 3 weeks later, the same one returning the library book's due date slip she'd accidentally left in her jacket for the 4th time, when she heard 2 men talking in the back in Korean. She didn't speak Korean. But she heard King's name and she heard the Korean word for contract because she'd looked it up once after the parking lot conversation, and she heard the word for gone. She asked Shim about it. Shim, who had started nodding at her when she passed the dry cleaner, who had given her a small bag of honey butter chips once without explanation and acted like he hadn't done it. She asked him carefully because she understood by now how to ask things carefully in King's world. Shim looked at her for a moment. Then he said, he gave up a partnership. A legal one. A company he'd spent 2 years building so there would be something clean with his name on it. He paused. He did it to make sure what happened with Cho was clean. So it couldn't touch you. Lillian stood in the doorway of the dry cleaner and felt something happen in her chest that she didn't have a word for. It wasn't gratitude. It was bigger than that. It was the feeling of understanding that someone had paid a real price. Not a small inconvenience, not something that cost them nothing, just to make sure she was safe. Not because they had to. Not because it helped them in any way. Just because she mattered enough. She was 12 years old and she had spent 6 of those years learning, very quietly and very thoroughly, that she didn't. That love was something people offered until it became inconvenient. That she was someone people left. She walked home slowly. She didn't know how to hold what Shim had told her. She turned it over the whole way back, the way you turn over something fragile, trying to figure out where to put it. She didn't text King that night. But she didn't throw away his number either. Miss Claudette's procedure was scheduled for January. The letter from the Community Health Fund came in December, 2 weeks before Christmas. She had been approved for full coverage through a program Lillian had never heard of, administered through a non-profit that had, apparently, identified her as a qualifying applicant through a referral from a local business partnership. Miss Claudette read the letter 3 times at the kitchen table. Her eyes were wet when she looked up. "Did you do this?" she asked Lillian. "No," Lillian said. Which was true. Miss Claudette looked at her for a long moment with that look she had, the one that meant she knew more than she was saying. Then she folded the letter carefully and put it in the drawer where she kept the important things. "Well," she said. "Someone did." Lillian nodded. She went to her room and sat on her bed and looked at her phone, at the contact still saved as King. She thought about typing something. "Thank you." Or maybe just, "She got the letter." She put the phone down. Some things didn't need to be said out loud. Some things were just true, the way the rain was true that night, the way it was true that she had hit the wrong number and a man had come anyway. 3 months after the rain, Lillian got a text at 4 in the afternoon. "There's a Korean bakery on Claremont, 2 blocks from the library. They have good red bean pastry. If you want to try it, I'll be there Saturday at 2. No obligation." She read it twice. Then she typed, "Okay." She brought the library book. She had finished it 10 days ago, and she'd put a sticky note on the last page that had been sitting on her desk since, waiting. She wasn't sure what she'd been waiting for until she pulled it out of her bag and looked at it before she left the apartment. Was good. "You should read it." King was already there when she walked in, at a corner table near the window where the afternoon light came in and made everything feel unhurried. He was in a dark sweater instead of a suit jacket, and he stood up when she came in, which she hadn't expected, and then sat back down, and neither of them made it strange. She ordered green tea because she didn't know what else to get. He ordered the same. The red bean pastries came in a small basket and they were warm and slightly sweet in a way that she hadn't expected, and she ate 2 of them without planning to. They talked. Not about Cho, not about Miss Claudette's procedure, not about any of it. She told him about the book, how the ending had surprised her, how she'd almost seen it coming but not quite, how the best endings always felt both inevitable and unexpected at once. He listened the way he always listened, like he had nowhere else to be and nothing else to think about. She asked him if he'd ever read much. "When I was younger," he said. "Before there wasn't time." "There's time now," she said. He looked at her. She slid the book across the table with the sticky note facing up. "You read it?" Something shifted in his face. Not a smile exactly, but something near the place where smiles come from. He picked up the book. They stayed for 40 minutes. Maybe 45. The bakery staff were stacking chairs on tables by the time they stood up, and Lillian put on her jacket and thought about how strange it was, and also how not strange it was, that this was what things had become. A sticky note. A table by a window. Red bean pastries and green tea and a man who had come when she called, not because he knew her but simply because she asked. Outside the afternoon was cold and clear. King walked her to the corner where her street branched off from his. "Same time next month?" he asked. Lillian thought about it for about half a second. "Yeah," she said. "Okay." She walked home. The Atlanta sky was doing that thing it did in February, going orange and pink at the edges before the dark came in, and she walked with her hands in her pockets and her shoulders back, not small, not braced for anything. Just walking. Just going home to her grandmother's apartment where the rice would be on and the news would be loud and everything would be ordinary in all the ways that mattered. She had texted the wrong number. A man had come anyway. And somewhere in the weeks that followed, in the dry cleaning tickets and the library books and the parking lot conversations and the price he paid without being asked, she had learned something she hadn't known she was missing. That needing something didn't make you a burden. That asking for help was not the same thing as giving someone a reason to leave. That some people, when they showed up, stayed. King drove back across the city with a library book on his passenger seat and a sticky note on the last page, and he thought about a girl who had found a phone on the sidewalk and turned it in without looking at it, who had written a note with only her initial because she wasn't looking for credit, who had sat in his parking lot and asked him hard questions and listened to the answers without flinching. He had built his whole life on the idea that nothing could reach him. That he had gone deep enough into what he was that the ordinary things, the warm things, the simple things, couldn't find him anymore. A 12-year-old with a wrong number had found him in about 30 seconds. He pulled onto Buford Highway and the city opened up around him, and for the first time in a long time, the silence in his car felt like something other than being alone. Neither of them was who they had been before the rain. And neither of them would have traded it. If you enjoy this story, hit the subscribe and like button for more.